have the privilege and the honor to shout a song like that out, to dance for joy, and not fear repercussion, because men and women have died for our freedom to do so. And there are men and women still fighting for our freedom to do so. My kids had a Memorial Day, I guess, service of sorts at their school. And I went and we sang a song. I can't even remember the song, but just the lyrics of the song reminded me, and I was moved to tearing up, that I get to fall asleep very comfortable in my bed. And that there are men and women around this planet, around this world right now, that would be falling asleep fearful to do so. Or not falling asleep for what might happen if they close their eyes. And so I want to take a second. If you're in the military, would you applaud those in the military right now? And for those that have sacrificed before us, thank you. Let's take a moment to pray. God, I thank you for the ability, for the freedom to celebrate Memorial Day weekend in a school. Father, declaring your name, that you are unstoppable. Declaring that we have freedom in you, not to be slaves to our past sin, but that we are children of God. Father, I thank you for a country that values freedom. And I thank you for men and women that value that, willing to serve. And for those that have laid down their lives so that we have this freedom. We thank you, Jesus, in your name. Amen. We do serve a very big God. And he is unstoppable. Louis Giglio had this talk that he did a few years ago called How Great Thou Art. And in that talk, he takes the size of the earth and he likens it, wait for it, to a golf ball. Now, this is a Titleist golf ball. It's a very good golf ball, so I'm not going to give this away at the end. I'm going to keep this. But this is a Titleist golf ball. So he likens stars and compares it to if the earth were a golf ball, and then he starts naming stars and does the whole comparison. And so I wanted to take a second to explain some of the things that he explained. So he said if the sun, which is a star, and if you were to take the golf ball, that the sun is about 1 million times bigger than our earth. So 1 million of these golf balls. Now you're not jumping for joy or like impressed by that. So let me, Ashlyn and Dupreme, get up here. You just gave me the peace signs. All right, mark out. Here's the start. Here's the end. Look up 15 feet. Don't break this. It's my wife. She'll end me. All right, where are we at? That's 13 feet. Here's 14 feet. Right here. Stand right here. All right, so that's 15 feet. So if the earth was a golf ball, this is the comparison in the diameter of the sun. All right, so the sun is a decent-sized star. All right, you guys can go sit down. Can you return that to my wife so she doesn't, hate me forever? She uses that for work. Thank you, guys. These guys are from our youth group. All right, that's a meeting. We have a whole, youth section up here. I had one dude before service, I can't wait to get back to youth group next week because I'm going to destroy some people in Marvel or Lego Marvel or something on Xbox. I was like, that's great, you do you. So, awesome. Love the youth ministry. And so if the earth were a golf ball, that's a big sun. But the sun is actually a really small star. So if you were to take the biggest star that we know, Canis Majoris, nicknamed the big dog star, if the earth were the size of a golf ball, Canis Majoris is the height of Mount Everest. Now that's not maybe impressive because not many of you have been to Mount Everest or climbed Mount Everest. Maybe this fact, it is, if you were to take the earth as a golf ball, you could fit 7 quadrillion earths inside this big dog star. Now, we don't use that term quadrillion a lot. That's enough golf balls, Louis Giglio says, to cover the entire state of Texas, 22 inches deep. So we serve a very, very big God because the psalmist talks about how God breathed out the stars. So if he's able to breathe out stars, he's incomprehensibly big. So it's our joy to speak of an unstoppable God. How big do you believe God to be? How would the people know around you? Would they know that you believe in a big God? Would your friends know that? Would the person next to you know that you believe that you serve a very big God that can breathe out stars, that we are just a small dot on a golf ball? Joshua is approaching a scene where he needs to call upon this big God. And he needs this big God to act. These kings that, as Joshua's in the land now, these kings are getting scared. And they're going to go up against the Gibeonites because the Gibeonites just made a deal with Joshua. We talked about that last week. And so the Gibeonites are termed, they're talked about as this powerful people. And so they're afraid. They've teamed up now with Joshua. And so now these 5 kings have made a deal. And it goes like this in verse 5 of chapter 10. You can follow along in the app. The scripture is there. Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jerimoth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with their armies and encamped against Gibeon and made war against it. People are scared because of what is going on. Not only what Joshua and the Israelites have done, but now they have an ally in Gibeon, and now they're scared. See, when you team up with God, you should expect to be attacked. Some of you guys have probably said yes to Jesus in the last few weeks. Expect attacks. Expect the enemy to rage war against you so that this whole following Jesus thing, that's for the birds. He's going to rage war when we team ourselves up with God. And so you might be at a crossroads. Maybe life is tough. Are you going to go on the attack against God? Or are you going to go on the attack with God? So what decision will you make with that? We had a lady join our starting point class. And through that class, she came to say yes to Jesus. We're going to hear from her next week. So I won't completely spoil everything she's going to say, but I'll tell you this. She said yes to Jesus, and guess what? Her bank account didn't get bigger. In fact, her car had issues and kept breaking down. She didn't even get a new car for saying yes to Jesus. Life actually got harder. And I was able to sit across the table with her and see her joy, see her tears, as she said, Jesus is walking with me through these challenges. If we only planted this church for that one scene in my head, I will thank God for the rest of my life. It was beautiful to see her struggle in her faith and know that her God is indeed unstoppable and walks with her. And so the Gibeonites have teamed up with Joshua, and now these 5 kings who are afraid. And 5 versus 1, what soon will be 2, wicked unfair. And so, in essence, Gibeon sends word to Joshua, many words that basically just say, help. We need you. And so in verses 7 through 8, it goes like this. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and the mighty men of valor, so his very best men. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear them. 5 people coming together. Don't fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. That's a great promise before you go into battle. Go into battle knowing you win. There's not going to be a single survivor. You got this. And so Joshua goes up. Leading up to this church, I shared this 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to repeat it because it fits now, and we're going to expand upon this a little bit. I told you guys that when we were launching this church, we took maybe a 2-year process to get this going. And during that time, I would visit a church up in Manchester, New Hampshire, Manchester Christian, and during the worship service, there was 2 times where I came the closest ever to maybe hearing God's audible voice saying, Jason, big things are going to happen through this church. It's going to take off. But Jason, decide now whose glory you're going to get. Whose credit's going to get. Is this for my glory or your glory? My credit or your credit? And so in that moment, I sat down, I just wept in my chair and wept after the service and said, God, this is your church. This is all for you. This is for your name, your glory, all of it. But I felt like in that moment, I had a promise that if we stayed obedient as a people and gave God room to work, that he would work. And we haven't been kicked out of the school yet, and here we are. And I'm thankful for you guys to be here today. Joshua goes up and sends his very best men. He sends the whole army. Keep in mind, these are the Gibeonites who the week before deceived Joshua, came and lied to him. Have you been wronged before? Joshua is willing to keep his word, take it seriously, and still go on the attack, send his very best men. And this time, Joshua's learned. We've seen how there's been 2 times or so where Joshua didn't seek out God. He did his own thing, and he goes into battle. This time, he's seeking God out beforehand, and Joshua says, or God says, I've got you, go. He has confidence enough to act now. He's confident in victory, and so verses 9 through 10 go like this. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal, an all-night march. Some of you guys haven't slept yet. You can relate to that. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon and chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth-Horon and struck them as far as Zechar and Makkedah. You guys have been there. And it goes on to say that the Lord sent hailstones. In fact, it literally says the Lord threw down large hailstones from heaven. Joshua hears a promise, and he doesn't say, well, you know what? I'm going to get a good night's sleep and rest on it. He says, no, we've heard a promise. We need to go. And they march all night long. He jumps into action. Joshua's promise, the promise made to Joshua, doesn't mean that he can be lazy. God said, I've got this, so I'm just going to sit back and just, you do you. No, he has victory, and Joshua goes right into action, moves forward with his whole army, makes the note that I'm taking my very best men. We're going to march our night. We're not going to rest. And when we get there, we're going to come up on them suddenly. That means we're not going to march all night and then take a moment to catch our breath. We're going to march all night, no sleep, a lot of work, and then go right into battle. And the text says that the Lord sent down hailstones. In fact, I think it goes on to say that more died because of the hailstones than because of the sword. So the end of the battle, what is important to know is that God brings victory, not Joshua. Joshua was just obedient, but it's our warrior king that fought for Joshua and brought about victory. Do you view God? Yes, the earth could be a golf ball. We could say God, 70, whatever it is, 7 quadrillion, 22 inches deep in Texas and whatnot. We could say, oh yeah, he's a big God. He's a warrior God. He's not somebody that we really want to mess with. But do we really live as if he's a warrior God? Because sometimes we live as if he's that loving, tender-hearted God that bring to me all the little children. He is that. He's forgiving. He is gracious. He is all those things. But on the flip side, he is a big God, a warrior God coming back. The robe dipped in blood, flames out of his eyes, and a sword out of his mouth. He's coming back in victory, and yet we live as if he's just tender-hearted. No, he's equally a warrior king. And so when I think about this in my life, do my last handful of text messages say that I think God is just loving, tender-hearted, I can talk a fool, and God will just forgive me? Or do I believe that God is a warrior king and I don't really want to mess with him? What about my last few direct messages on Instagram, or the snaps I've sent, or the conversations I've had in private before I got here? Does it say that I believe God just to be tender-hearted, or do we believe he to be this warrior king that he is, that we really don't want to mess with him? I want to live a life where I know my God goes and is victory, and I want to live in awe and wonder of that. And so if I am confident of victory, I can give him my very best effort. I'm confident that God is going to continue to do something crazy in our midst if we walk obediently. But like Joshua, that doesn't mean that I, as your pastor, can sit back lazy. Can sit back and just, you guys do you. God will do him. See, if you were to read my journal, you're not allowed to read my journal, but if you were ever to read that, you would see one word on almost every single page, tired, 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 tired. Because I'm confident in the promises of God, but I want to give the promises of God my very best effort. I don't want to sit back and just wonder if God will work. I want him to magnify my efforts to bring victory. And I want you to outwork me. I want you to work right alongside me. If we're going to get competitive, because I'm competitive. I love my Red Sox. They're on a 6 or 7 game winning streak for you Yankee fans. I'm competitive. Outwork me in loving my community. Outwork me in the mission of igniting a craving for Jesus by relentlessly loving our community. Outwork me, because you know what? God wins, the community wins, we all win. There's a time for rest, but there's a time to work so that we need rest. So, are you willing to march all night? Do you believe in the promises of God? Would your words display that? Would your prayers display that? Are you confident in the big God that you and I serve? Are you willing to put yourself in a position where if God doesn't show up and show off, you're beat? Put yourself in a position that it utterly depends upon God for complete victory. And so the Israelites, they were on verge of victory, but it hadn't happened yet. And so Joshua does something utterly crazy in verses 12 through 14. At the time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel. And he said, in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Arjun. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies, is it not there written in the book of Jasher? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry and set before a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man. The Lord fought for Israel. So God hears the prayers of a man, and he acts. So I don't serve, even though he's a big old God and I'm just a peon on a golf ball. My God is ever present, hearing my prayers and acting accordingly, according to his will. And it's important to know that in the text it says, this has never happened before. The sun never stopped. Joshua prayed for something that had literally never taken place before. So would you and I look at this, if we were to take a step back, wouldn't you and I look at this and say, that's the dumbest prayer we've ever heard? If we were to be honest, wouldn't we look at Joshua and say, he just prayed for the sun to stop moving? He's an idiot. On face value, we would think that. I'm wondering what his people thought when they heard Joshua say, okay, what's the game plan, Joshua? Hold on, let me pray. God, just stop the sun. All right, thank you, and go into battle. Like, if you're his army, what are you thinking? It's probably the dumbest prayer he's ever prayed, but also we could look at it and say, how is it the smartest prayer he's ever prayed? How does it show the wits of Joshua? Because what has Joshua seen? He was there in Egypt where with the plagues he saw a sea part. He saw manna come down. He saw fire at night. He saw a river at flood stage part. He's seen battles. He's seen walls fall down. He's seen a whole lot of things that can only be explained by God. So of course, Joshua, in complete confidence, can say to God, God, I need a little bit more daylight here. Stop the sun. Thanks. So it's not a stupid prayer. In fact, his prayer is an act of worship. Have you thought about that before? Have you thought about how your prayers are an act of worship? You have a need in your life? I have needs. Who do I take them to? If I'm taking them to God, worship is the worthship, ascribing God worth. So if I'm praying and bringing all of my needs to God, I ascribe him worth by saying, God, I have this need. You're the only one capable. And so I ascribe you worth by bringing the need to you, Not my friends, not my wife, not my family, although that might come. But I first start with bringing my need to God, starting there. And so our prayers, as Joshua did, can ascribe God worth. And it ends by saying, surely the Lord fought for Joshua and Israel that day. We are to live boldly. We are to live obedient and let the results be God's. I want my life. I want my faith. I want everything to say that there is an obvious act of God going on. I don't want to live a boring life. I don't want to live as if God is stoppable. I want to live as if God is unstoppable, and I want everything about me to scream that. I don't want it to be a question. We are to trust God, and He is to perform. Act obediently. Now, if you've been a part of the launch process, and if you've been to one of our starting points, or if you've just been around me for a second, there's a story that I tell over and over again. I'm going to tell it again, and you've heard it, and I don't care. I'm going to tell it till I die. It's actually going to be on my grave. On my gravesite, it's going to say, Jason prayed about an omelet, and God said something. Because what happened was Ava and I were, I don't know if you want to call it hustling, but we were going around and talking to people, trying to get some funding for this church, because this doesn't all happen for free. And so we were talking to people, and I was meeting with the church up in New Hampshire and Manchester Christian, and where I heard God just kind of powerfully speaking to me through that whole process. And I was meeting with their executive pastor, and he said, Jason, you should just come ask us for money. I said, you don't know me well enough, because I'm going to say yes to that offer. And so we went up there. Ava and I were staying at my parents' house. We were going to meet with them in between some of their services. And so Ava and I were going to get breakfast to collect our thoughts, and then go to service and talk with them and whatnot. And Ava and I had prayed, we had fasted, and we felt like, okay, God's put on our heart that we're going to walk in and ask for $30,000. That's a lot of money. I can only imagine now as a lead pastor, someone walked in and said, Jason, I need $30,000. Oh, man, the church down the street. And I'd laugh at them. And so I was uncomfortable. We made a whole proposal sheet, and in the morning of I worked out, I came back up, and Abe was like, Jason, what is God telling you? She was like all crazy, like more crazy than normal, like bajiggity and all that stuff. And she's like, what is he telling you? I was like, he's saying you stink and you need a shower. And she's like, no, God's telling me we're not asking for enough money. I was like, Ava, in West Virginia, I've heard that money grows on trees. But my wife's from West Virginia, but that's a lot of money. And so she's like, no, we got to ask for more. I think we need to ask for 50. And so I took a shower, and inside I was like, God, I don't want to get laughed out of this room. What if this is of Satan? What if this is of the enemy? And we're going to get laughed out of this room. And so I asked God for a confirmation. In New Jersey, I've actually found a second diner at this point, but at the time I only knew of one diner that made my exact omelet. Egg whites, grilled chicken, spinach, cheddar cheese. That's how I like my omelet. I don't want you to substitute chicken with turkey. That's stupid. I don't want feta cheese instead of cheddar cheese. That's stupid. I want my omelet the way I want it. And at the time, there was only one diner that would make it that way. And so Ava and I were going to this new place, and I said, God, and I asked for my omelet, if they make it the exact way, if they have all the ingredients, I'm going to take it as your confirmation that we should ask for $50,000. Sounds stupid, but so did that prayer, so bear with me. We go, and we order. I say all the ingredients, and Ava and I are just like staring at this lady. Is she going to say yes or no? And she said, yep, I'll whip that up for you. It was the most tasty $50,000 omelet I've ever had, because we had the proposal. We went, we talked with them, and about 3 months later or so, they got back to me and said, Jason, you're going to give Wellspring 3 years, $15,000. Just short, $45,000. Hey, but we're going to give you a one-time gift at the end of our fiscal year. All right, cool. You don't know this. I didn't say this to them at the time. You don't know this, but that's going to be a $5,000 gift. And guess what? It was a $5,000 gift. God blessed a crazy prayer. And what's crazy to me is this thing blew up. We wouldn't have staff right now if it wasn't for Manchester Christian's money. We need that money. Our tithes are not at a place where we can sustain without outside help. God knew exactly what we needed. And he blessed that prayer. But there was months where I had to come back here. I had to talk to our treasurer at the time. I had to talk to Wheels. I had to talk to our core team. I had to talk to others and say, yeah, I prayed this prayer. I hope $50,000 is going to come our way. But I don't know. You asked for $50,000? But I was confident in the Lord's work. And he said yes. The thought for this morning is that bold living flows out of an understanding of our God. So how are you and I living? Does it show that we believe in a bold, our understanding of God, that we're living in such big, awesome, crazy ways? Because our God is big, awesome, and insane in all the right ways. I want my life to represent that. You want to overcome the battles in your life? Live boldly because your God is bold. I'm a scrawny guy. I used to work out with our sound guy, but he didn't like waking up at 5 in the morning, so that stopped. And so I just use an elliptical. I'm not a big guy. So if I was going to get into a fight, I would need some help. I would look around, some of you guys here, I'm seeing some of the bigger guys, I'd tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, come with me, I got a job, and I need you to beat up somebody. If I was going to go into a fight, I wouldn't go alone. I would, talk about The Rock. For some of you guys, maybe it's the Hulk, or Hulk Hogan, or whatever that guy's name was. Or the Hulk, I guess that works too. And I would want to bring the muscle. And if I had the muscle, I would be confident in victory. And so if you have battles to overcome, why not bring the muscle? Why not let the muscle fight for you? Because Jesus wants to fight for you. He has fought for you. If Joshua had little faith, would he have prayed in that manner? If he had little faith in God, would he have marched all night, fought all day, and then prayed a prayer that said, God, I want to continue fighting. Not God, you just do you, but I want to keep fighting. He wasn't lazy. If you have big faith, where is God taking you? Where is he stretching you? Do your actions display big faith in God? Do your prayers display big faith in God? And I'm not saying be stupid. God has given you wisdom. It's not pray something so that we can be lazy. God, I have a financial debt. God, I need $1 million, but I'm going to ignore your wisdom to help get out of debt. Use wisdom. Know your God. Be confident in the promises of God. And when you're confident in what God's leading, pray big prayers. Live a big life in honor of that. Joshua wasn't confident of his victory. He was confident of God's victory. That this isn't about Joshua. This is about God fighting for us. So Wellspring Church, we've prayed big prayers and God has answered them. Now what? How do we move on? How do we continue pushing forward, asking God to do big things, serving a big God and saying, I'm not content in this. You're bigger, God. So as a church, I almost feel naked up on stage saying this is where I feel God leading us. Because it's uncomfortable. Because what I'm about to say is stupid without God acting. But, whatever. So God, I feel like God, and our leadership feels like God is calling us into getting involved in a more strategic way with community kindness activities. To take our actions, our community kindness action, and say we're going to either buy a building at some point where we can help people get out of the ruts of life that they're in, or we're going to see a need in our community and start funding that need or doing something with that need. But we're relentlessly searching right now how we can get involved in really loving our community and taking that to a whole nother level. Now that in and of itself is just a continuation of what we're doing. So here's where it gets a little more crazy is over the next 25 years, when I retire and some young whippersnapper takes my place at that point, I want to see Wellspring be involved in planting 1,100 churches. I love what's happened here. I want it to happen again and again and again and again. And I want to see 1,100 churches be birthed out of this movement. That might happen with funding with our church that we're supporting over in India, the missionary who plants church after church. Whether it's through Converge and funding Converge, or whether it's churches that we want directly birthed out of us. So would God use us to birth 1,100 churches to reach people that don't know Jesus? And that means that we need to grow. We need to grow to support. I want to create a culture that if you haven't been asked to plant a church or be on a launch team, that you start wondering what's wrong with you. I want to create a culture where we're just sending people out, putting people on mission to reach people for Jesus Christ. I heard of 2 communities this morning. A lady came up to me and said, my friends love what's going on with Wellspring. They don't have anything like this in their community. Awesome. That might be our next 2 church plants. Because why not start sending people out? And so those are big, hairy, audacious goals. And to start, I need a little hail from heaven. I want to start by loving our community this summer. I want to be put into action right now. And so here's the bigger challenge, the immediate challenge I'm putting before you. I want Wellspring Church to collect a bunch of diapers. Because if you're in the community, if you're a struggling family, you can find food, you can find lodging at times, but if you want formula, you can get formula, but we found that there's no place to provide diapers, straight up diapers. And I have kids, one still in diapers, and if I didn't have diapers, that would be awful. And so this summer, we want to collect 100,000 diapers as a way to ignite a craving for Jesus by relentlessly loving our community. I've seen this work. One of our aisle hosts, her name is Michelle. Last week, she was telling me how, Jason, I came to church because of the gas giveaway. I heard about you. You and I met together in a coffee shop. We talked, cried together, prayed together. And she started coming to church, and then she got involved as an aisle host. She stands, I'm pointing over here because she stands over here. And she's an aisle host. And then last week she was like, but I have this knee surgery, and I'm going to miss church, or I think a foot surgery, and I'm going to miss church, and it really bums me out. But guess what just happened? I met Gail. Michelle works right there. Gail works right over here. She's like, I just met Gail. And guess what? She lives 3 doors down from me in my retirement home. 3 doors. And she said she's going to give me a ride to church so I don't have to miss church. Her love for Jesus, yeah, you can clap that. Her love for Jesus was reignited because we loved her in a practical way. And so we value captivating environments. We serve a creative God, so we want to design environments of excellence, fun, and creativity because we value captivating environments. I don't want, loving our community is an extension of that, to get people captivated by Jesus so that we can point them to Jesus. It happened with Michelle, and I'm praying that this summer there are families that are struggling that just receive the graciousness of a few diapers. And that God would use it to show love to our community. So that's my challenge for us, how we can act right now. As I'm asking us before next week to buy 2 boxes of diapers. We create an Amazon wish list. If you pull up our app, the very first thing is a diaper. It's a really odd icon for a church app, but there's an icon that's a diaper. I ask that you would go on that Amazon wish list and that you would buy 2 boxes. Ava, if you have your phone, feel free to do that now for you and I. We're going to buy 2 boxes. We'll lead the way. I mean that genuinely. And so my challenge for us, let's act now. Oh, there's the funny icon. My challenge for us, before next week, would we buy two boxes of diapers? They get shipped to my house, which is going to be awesome. The mailman will hate me, which I'm good with. But that's my son stand still prayer, is that by the end of the summer, we would have 100,000 diapers to give to people in our community. I said that you guys were an answer to prayer, and you are. You're an answer to prayer because we've been praying for you. We prayed for big things to happen. We laid out our structure. We laid out our map. We laid out our core values. We laid out our mission statement. And we were praying, God, what should we specifically pray for? And we were sitting in a room, a group of us, praying these kind of, God, what are we praying for? And so we're debriefing, we're talking, and Carly, the worship leader, says, I think we should pray for 400 adults on that first Sunday. And I nicely looked at her and said, that's stupid, because that never happens. And we should pray for 200 adults the second Sunday, because statistically you get cut in half between week 1 and week 2. And I was like, maybe 200, maybe 300, but 400, that's outrageous. And then Graham started talking. He's like, I'm a marketing guy, and if we want to reach 400 people on that first Sunday, then we need to have these touch points in the community. That's 15,000 touch points in the community. I'm like, I know 4 people. I was like, okay. And we all started talking. We were like, okay, that's what God's calling us to. And we started praying it. And I remember sitting in this chair. I refused to look back because I was going to throw up on that first Sunday. And Dan came up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, you're going to want to look back. I said, not if you won't want me to throw up on you. And he's like, this happened. It happened. It happened. He was blown away. And then a guy from Portable Church came up to me. He's like, yo, we're running out of seats. I'm like, you should shut up. Stop talking. And I walked up on the stage on that launch Sunday, and I turned around and to look, and yeah, the curtains were gone. And what I've told people when they talk about that experience, I said, to me, when I walked up these stairs and turned around for the first time, I saw the sun stop moving.